gonna work.
Hello and welcome to Pinstripe Chronicles, the Upper Deck Season Edition. I'm Lynn, and good morning, Ciarra.
Good morning, Lynn. How are you today?
Well, I have my sweatshirt on because it's cold in the stadium, but it's hot everywhere else. And how are you doing?
I'm excited for this off season. There's a lot going on. I just hope that it doesn't fizzle out come December and then we're kind of just sitting like this from January to March waiting for something to happen. There's a lot going on with a lot of teams right now.
Yep, and that I guess is what it's all about in this hot stove time. I feel like it heated up like the minute the Dodgers ran on our field. The rumors were flying, and our buddies are drifting in here. So hey, John the Beagle Dad and Jonathan and Brad. Hey, LFE, long time no see. Lori, good to see you here, and Shayna, good morning. So yeah, so let's get right to the good stuff. Um, so here we are gathering around the hot stove. um, so we're gonna switch things up with our usual segments. Hey Gregory, great to see you. And we're really gonna be just focusing on everything going on, all the wheeling and dealing. So let's talk about the rumors that have already started because that's always an expected thing that we can rely on. So I have a feeling, Ciara, that I could just say one name and we won't have to do much talking because I think the chat will chime in right away. So the big buzz I've been seeing all over the place this week has to do with Roki Sasaki, the right-hander that is more than likely going to be posted for international trade in the very near future. Right-handed pitcher, 23 8 years old, and he is expected to be the number one MLB prospect. So, and hey, good morning, Karen and FJ. So what are your thoughts about Sasaki? Is he going to be the Otani and Yamamoto of the coming season?
I think it's a matter of not if they'll post them, of when. So they have until December 15th. And if they don't
Mm,
post them by then, they can start over in January. I think that Sasaki will be a more interesting player than Otani and Yamamoto because Otani, we had already saw him for so long in the States. We already knew what he was doing. We already knew he was going to be this hot commodity. Sasaki is a 23-year-old superstar right now. He's considered a unicorn over in Japan. He set high school records. And I know, like, oh, high school, no big deal, but he's only 23, right? So he's barely out of high school at this point. Um, he once pitched a 12 inning, 21 strikeout game, 194 pitches. And he also set the Japanese high school record for a fastball recorded at 163 uh, kilometers, which is like 101.2 miles per hour, roughly. I had to do the conversion. I don't know if that's correct because the different math. But I know the Dodgers are the biggest name on the market for the Japanese superstars at this point. However, I think that the Cubs are going to emerge as the dark horse, and the reason I think that is because number one, they have Shota Amanga, and he's a Japanese superstar himself, but also because the Cubs are determined to stay under the luxury tax threshold. And if Sasaki comes over to the States, he's going to come over on a minor league deal. He's not going to come over on this huge $100 million deal. It's going to be 10 million or less. So I think the Cubs could afford him. Whereas with Soto and Yamamoto and Otani and all those guys, they had no dog in the fight because they didn't have or didn't want to spend the money. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so I mean, the Cubs are going to have some heavy competition because I would say even more so from the Mets than from the Yankees.
Hmm.
Because the Mets and the Yankees are also they've done big time extensive scouting on him. And I read that's one AL executive thinks that though in terms of favorites, it's going to be between the Dodgers and the Padres. Um,
Mhm.
but that the Mets may not be too far behind. So, um, I think that you're making a good argument for the Cubs, but I also think geographically,
Mhm.
it's an easy odds-on favorite for it to be the West Coast for obvious reasons. And I think everyone's already is kind of leaning towards, of course, the Dodgers. They'll have the trio, but the Padres are there too, and they're looking to go even further and deeper from this surprise of a season they had. So I'm not so clear on the coffers they have, but I see that going on in the market for sure. And yeah, it depends on who gets to sign him and how early. I see what Brad's posting here about he can only
Mhm.
earn up to 3 million. Yeah, so that kind of ups the ante that he's going to be posted after December 15th.
Yeah, and to your point about the Padres, they became a supervillain in the West and a thorn in the side of the Dodgers in the playoffs. So if they were to sneak in and take Sasaki, it's going to be like pulling the rug from underneath them, and that's a total supervillain move. So who knows? Maybe they will. I just think the Dodgers is too easy of an answer right now, and I would hate to see that happen personally.
Yeah, and it also sort of rebrands the Dodgers as the team, the Japanese team.
Mhm.
And I'm not so sure from um, a marketing perspective, what does it say about them that they are pivoting first to international superstars when there are plenty, and we'll get to this today as well, in our own markets that could fit the bill. Maybe not with the buzz. And the other thing is, I think everything's relative in terms of superstardom in Japan and superstardom in the US. And so in terms of the number of leagues, the number of teams here versus there, um and I can't speak to that financially, but I think that the extra specials get a light shined on them quicker and more readily than here. So we'll just have to see, but I feel like this is also a tell to me that why are we needing to pivot to Japan, and what are we missing in our own farm systems? That's the counterpoint to everything I just said.
I think
um
the biggest thing is when it comes to the international free agency is it's cheaper to sign an international free agent at this point. You're talking $3 to $8 million versus 14. And I know $14 million in baseball isn't a lot of money, but we've seen
right.
that a lot of these owners are trying to go cheaper now with the luxury tax. So they're going to try to cut corners any way they can. And this is me just, talking nonsense. So I'm not an owner. I don't know anything, but from an outsider's perspective, that could make a lot of sense if they're just trying to cut corners and save money. But to FJ's point in the comments, if Japanese players insist on only playing on the West Coast, at what point does the West Coast run out of money? Because the Dodgers are already deferring so much money for Otani that at some point they're
True.
not going to be able to pay players. So what why would you want to go somewhere where you might not make money?
Right. And Brad's making a good point that he only has 45 days to be signed, or we don't get him for another 2 years, any of us.
I think
um
he'll be signed. I don't with how heavily scouted he is right now and how many teams are after him and just the fact that it's less than $10 million, that like I'm gonna go back to the Cubs. So the Cubs could get an ace for the next 8 to 10 years if they bring on Sasaki. Whereas like the Yankees, we have an ace. We could use another arm in the rotation because you can't really count on Nestor Cortez. And honestly, at this point, who knows if you can count on Rodon or Cole? But we don't really have the money to spend on the rotation, whereas the Mets could also use somebody if Manaya or Sebi don't come back.
right.
So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and they're definitely on my list to talk about if we get to it today. And hey, good morning, Lou. You're right. Thanks for pointing that out. The Japanese leagues do have non-Japanese players. That's more than fair to call that out. And yeah, it's a cheaper get, even with the 20% tax that they'd have to pay for signing an international. um they'd have to release they have to pay a 20% release fee for the salary that they end up paying him. So it'll be interesting to see, but he certainly, it seems like the letter S is like the big consonant so far for the rumor mill, because Sasaki and a certain guy with that name begins with S, from the Yankees, or you know hopefully will remain, is also going to be big in the conversation. So also here's some other names that I've heard bandying about. Um, oh, hey, hey, Barlow, um, so, Soto to the Mets.
We will get there.
Yeah, so we're getting there very fast and soon. We're not going to be able to hold back for much longer. And that's interesting. Lou's talking about Carney. Who?
Mirakami, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have much intel on him, but um, do you, Ciara? That
I've
didn't come
heard
up.
I've heard his name thrown around, but
Yeah.
I don't. So I think the Yankees are really focused right now on filling the infield holes, and if they have to, if they are not going to resign Soto, and then from there they'll focus on pitching because we do have some holes in the bullpen that need to be filled as well.
Right. Yeah, but if we re-sign Soto, acquire Sasaki and Murakami, it's a good off season. Yeah, it's a good off season, but then there's other pieces that we're not going to be able to fill. It makes me then wonder about the bullpen, for example, which
Oh,
we
I apologize. Mirakami is a infielder, so I was completely wrong. I assumed he was another pitcher, but I have heard his name.
yeah,
He is a
I
first
did too.
baseman.
Gregory, I thought we were friends. What's this nonsense you put up? Please say that was a joke. Um, so let's pivot away from pitchers for just a second. So Caleb Durbin is a name that's been piquing some interest this week, and as a potential Ciarra second baseman. And we still don't know what's going to happen with Glaber.
Mhm.
Just because they didn't offer the QO doesn't mean that they're not going to make the grab. But their eyes have to go elsewhere, and Caleb Durbin's looking like a hot shot right now. Especially after last night's fall All-Star game, and how well he did there, with a complete game at third during the AFL Fall Stars game. So there's been reporters like Passon who's had his eyes on him since midway through the season. So Caleb Durbin is definitely somebody to watch. So what do you think about Durbin? Any buzz for any of you? Anything for you about Durbin? Any opinions?
Yeah. So before I jump in and start talking about how great Durbin is and blah 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 blah, let me just say, if the Yankees were to re-sign Glaber on a cheap prove-it deal, they would be penalized as far as draft picks are concerned. So who knows what they're going to do? But I could see Glaber going to an AL rival and just absolutely brutalizing us every time we face him, because that is what happens every time we let someone go. He will get his revenge if we don't resign him, and it'll suck, but like I want to see my favorite player do well. So if he has to go somewhere else to do it, then I guess at this point, if you love someone, you have to let them go. So at this point, I guess I'm willing to let him go. But now
Yeah.
that I've broken my own heart on camera, Caleb Durbin is definitely someone to watch. So Arizona Fall League last year, he was actually the first player in like 20 years, 15 years. to steal 20 bases, and he did it in 21 tries. And then this year, he's actually one steal away from the record of 24. And he's posting an OPS of like 935. So he's really trying to prove himself right now, and we could see some movement with him in spring training. However, I don't know what they're going to do with Jazz Chisholm. Do they keep Jazz at third? Or do they move him back to second, which is his more natural position? Because the Yankees have so many players playing out of their natural position, and we've seen how that's bit us in the ass last season. So do they move Jazz back to second and then bring in a third baseman instead? Because as much as, it sucks to say, DJ LeMahieu is not an everyday player, and we're not going to eat his money, so we'll still be stuck with him. But he can't play the infield every day.
Right.
So.
Right. And FJ and Gregory are talking about the very same thing. And Poop Barlow is saying that he needs to go to his actual position in the outfield.
Listen, Poop Barlow, I mentioned all season that Jazz was a center fielder, and I got 8 and up, but we also don't have room for him in the outfield, right? Like we have Judge, we have Dominguez, because we're not going to resign Doogie. If we resign Soto, who I don't even want to talk about his disasters in the outfield, but he'll be in right field. And then we still have Trent Grisham. He's still going to be there too, and he's a Gold Glove center fielder. So that doesn't leave any room for Jazz Chisholm in the outfield.
True. Yeah, and Brad saying that Durbin could play third as well as second, so it's not an issue moving Jazz. I guess the good news is we have guys that could do more than one position, which will come in handy and has come in handy in the season. And Poop, can I call you Poop? So Poop has a really good point, and no, it's not really a hot take, but thanks for remembering one of our regulars segments.
But the thing is, so Judge is playing out of position, right, by playing center field. But until the World Series, he played it very well. Until that drop, he had not made a single error all season, and he made some fantastic plays. Even that same inning, right before he dropped the ball, Superman ran into the wall, and I'm pretty sure that's what started his downfall. I'm pretty sure he concussed himself, because the Dodgers and outfield walls and Judge just don't go well together. But it's not his natural position, but it doesn't mean he can't play it. He's actually very good at it. So back to my original point, there is no room for Jazz in the outfield at this point, right? Because Dominguez has been knocking on the door. Yankees fans are calling for him. They're calling for Hal's head if they don't bring him up at this point. And like I said, Doogie's going to walk. If we re-sign Soto, that puts Soto in right field. If we don't re-sign Soto, that's moving Judge to right, but we still have Grisham in center, which he's not an everyday player, but he is a Gold Glove center fielder, so there is some value there.
Right. No, agree on all counts. And Gregory, that's not going to happen for all the reasons Ciarra just said. And he's going to have to be in left field. And yes, that's going to need some development because he hasn't really looked so hot there. But he's going to need a lot of training all around anyway. In terms of fielding. So, unfortunately, I don't think that's the solution there. And FJ, I wouldn't really ask Judge to make another switch. I think he wanted to go to center field, but now to a third, I'm not so sure how that would play. And what would that really mean? I guess for the purposes of having the Martian play center, because he's more acquainted there. I don't think you move Judge to accommodate Dominguez. I think it would be the other way around, but that's just me. And who I forgot to mention about who we did get? Guys, we have Aaron Boone back. That should have been the first thing we mentioned. So yeah, he got his they took his club option and so he's back. And it made me reflect a little bit. And we went all over this during our anchor sessions after the World Series, but I do remember a show or two where we were noting everything that Boone was doing really well during the championships. And I also came across, I was watching Curry and Lorenz, and I saved this. You know, when you look at his record overall, we forget how accomplished he is. It's those of us that are, day-to-day fans watching every game, every second of every game. We pick on things and we are hard as it is. But let me lay some facts out for you. Boone has recorded a .584 record while reaching the postseason in all but 1 year, in all but one of his 7 years as a manager. He has had 603 wins versus 429 losses in those seasons. And he is only the second manager in MLB history to reach the postseason in 6 of his first seasons in first seven seasons as a manager. And he joins Dave Roberts with that title. So, and how ironic.
Yeah, right.
Right. And lastly, he's the third Yankees manager to make the playoffs in 6 of his first 7 seasons with the club, joining Casey Stengel and Joe Torre. So when you think of all, our, decades and decades of existence, he's in the tops. If you're putting his name next to Stengel and Torre, then what are we even talking about overall? So I just wanted to counterpoint what will continue to be, and we'll forget about everything that I just said, and we'll be back to be complaining about him every inning of every game. But look at those numbers. Numbers don't lie, and and I understand why they signed him, and he is considered a prime manager. So
regular season, I definitely was a Boone defender. But after the World Series and the mistakes that were made, they need to clear the whole coaching staff. All of them can go, because the mistakes that were made on behalf of the coaching, pulling the pitchers at the wrong time or leaving them in at the wrong time, or when Garrett Cole was completely melting down, where was Matt Blake and where was Aaron Boone to come out and slow it down for him? Anthony Rizzo shouldn't be the one that's in charge of constantly going to the mound. Like, yes, as a veteran, it looks good, but in that moment, you need a manager to go out and check in with the pitcher and slow things down. And then Luis Rojas with his terrible sends at third base, like, they can all go. Wipe the slate clean. I mean, at this point, it doesn't matter because they already brought back Boone. But in my opinion, get rid of them all. Get rid of Boone. Get rid of Blake. Get rid of Rojas. Get rid of Casey Dykes. Like, I don't care. They can all go because you failed us in the World Series. It doesn't matter if you get there and lose, because at that point, we're the first place losers. And I'm still sore about it because the Dodgers, they didn't even outplay us. We outplayed ourselves. We beat ourselves. And I will not let that go, because what the hell happened in the 5th inning of Game 5? That was like, it was the day before Halloween, so it was like they just had to give us a nightmare. So they can all go.
All right, and listen, Herd, you always make sense, and that's all valid points. And FJ is saying, look, I was just reporting, guys. Are those statistics that meaningful? Until the 90s, it was much harder to reach the postseason. So, point taken, FJ, and it tracks with what Ciarra just said. However, however you compare the postseasons, and we're not going to dive into the teams faced and all those things that go into it, but this is what people are seeing in the books. So don't shoot the messenger. I just thought it was interesting, and I took it as like, okay, it's not going to stop my attitude. I'm not adjusting. I know who I am and what I'll be saying every season while he's here. But I just thought it would be interesting to bring up there and get the reaction it got. And that's fair enough, Karen. We most definitely, look, 2024 didn't do much for his future. And let's see what happens in this next contract term of his. But it wasn't a shining moment, and that's what we have short-term memories. So that's what we're going to land on and still be angry about. We're still in the 7 stages of grief about. And Gregory's talking real facts. The entire seasons were full of nonsense and embarrassment. So, and let's see, who else did I miss coming in? Hey, Jordan, good to see you. Thanks for dropping in. I'm sure I missed someone else along the way. And yeah, and oh, you're really gonna bring on the post-traumatic stress poop. Yes, been there, done that. We have vented. We've let most of it out, but I don't think it'll get out of our system altogether. Probably ever. Okay, FJ, got you. Yep. So, yeah, okay. Not every great Hall of Famer made it to the World Series. Yep. That is very true. Don Mattingly, well, Don Mattingly should be in the Hall of Fame, so that's a little unrelated to what you were saying. So, all right. So now let's pivot to the other big wondering and what we think is going to happen, and what are the rumors about Juan Soto, who basically is sitting somewhere on the West Coast, laying in his chair, smoking a good cigar, and letting his suitors come to him. So we know that Cohen's going to be the first one to meet with him over there. He's going over there this week with Steinbrenner, soon to follow. And apparently there's been assurances made that the order of these conversations aren't going to impact the decision. So so the final rose is up for grabs to anybody. So, don't worry if you're fifth in line, because it's not just going to be Cohen and Steinbrenner knocking on that door wherever he is out there. So let's have it.
Oh my God. I love Juan Soto, and we need him and he needs us. But at the end of the day, that boy's going to go where the money is. He's made it very clear. And so is Scott Boras. He's a Boras client. He's going to go where he gets the money. Now, Cohen is the richest manager in baseball. He can afford him. But does he want to go over the luxury tax? And then the Yankees can afford him too, but then other holes are going to suffer if we do bring him back. And I'm just trying to be realistic, okay? I want Soto back. But if he were to walk, it is easier to plug the holes in the bullpen and the infield. Whereas if he comes back, now we have to address first base. If they bring up Durbin, I guess we don't have to address second or third. But first base is going to be a hole because we're not bringing back Rizzo. And then we have the bullpen that we have to address. So I don't know what's going to happen, but Juan Soto wants to have the highest contract to have ever happened. And the Mets and the Yankees aren't going to defer money like the Dodgers. Now, you made a comment at the beginning of the show that the rumors started flying during the World Series, but honestly, I think it goes back to the All-Star game. Because he had made a comment about if he was ever to play like with somebody, it was it Freddie Freeman that he would want as a teammate, I think he said. And then he was seen like chuckling and being all chummy with the Dodgers players. So I had said way back then that he could be a Dodger next season. But they also, with all the deferred money, do they have any money to offer him at this point? I think those are really the only three contenders. I know Phillies fans, for some reason, think that they're in this conversation, but there's no way in hell that they are. It's really going to come down to New York, or LA, and who's going to give him the biggest contract. And we also have to consider, and I'm sorry, because now I'm just rambling. We have to consider the fact that we have Giancarlo Stanton right now, right, who is strictly a DH, and Yankees fans eat him up every season. In 5 to 10 years, that's going to be Soto. Soto is not going to play the outfield for the rest of his career because A, he's not very good at it, and B, he's going to be a designated DH. That's just kind of what he's destined for at this point. So I don't know. The Yankees got to decide. Do we want to give this kid all this money and have to have Cole's contract, Judge's contract, and Soto's contract eating up all of our money? Or do we let him walk because we didn't win the World Series with him anyway?
Right. And it's facts that he's not what we want as an outfielder. And for the money that we'd be paying, we need an all-around person more than anything, if possible. And this is coming also from a Soto lover. Actually, find me someone who isn't a Soto lover. I'd like to meet them. He is a Yankee and should remain a Yankee, but at the same time, we have to be realistic about all the reasons why we didn't get all the way. And it was both the bats and the fielding. And when I say fielding, I mean more the outfield. All right, I mean more no, I won't say that. But he's not the all around. He was here for his bat, and he gave us his bat. But we can't keep compensating for that. So and Brad, you impressed me with all this like financial stuff. I'm lucky if I come out even at the end of the month, so I have no idea about this. But okay, under new tax rules in New York, may tighten his wallet a bit. Then I would imagine the same would be true of Hal, whose wallet is the tightest in town.
Mhm.
So it's going to be interesting. And the Dodgers, if the Dodgers get Sasaki and they get Soto, and they already robbed us of Yamamoto and Ohtani, let's give the Evil Empire title over to them, because they will literally be unbeatable. And so let's hope that something happens with that to make that not possible. But if we don't get Soto, what do we do, and how do we compensate for it? So hold on to your seats when I tell you that the Yankees have looked into to Burns, Snell, and Fried, and that's not going to become so much a surprise. But they're also looking into Santander as a potential outfielder. So let's just get those four names out into the conversation. And is there any feelings of yay, nay, or hell no about any of these? And are they even viable?
I mean, I personally say hell no to all the pitching. Burns himself is looking for a $200 million contract, and that's just not something the Yankees can dish out to a pitcher at this point. Santander isn't a terrible option. It's just here's the problem when it comes to talking about Juan Soto, right? His defense just it drives you insane, but his offense, like you can't replace his offense no matter what you do. But it's like he's going to cost so much money. Is he going to cost us the future? Or can we take a young team and build it around him and he can be the future? Like there's so many questions, but I say hell no to the pitchers just because they cost too much at this point. Santander, if we lose Soto, I don't hate it as an option, but he's not going to replace the offense.
The thing that would make me mad about it is you're basically changing the same for the same, except for an older version, because you could count on Santander for the bat, but not for the D, and we already have that with Soto. So and if you have to widen those pockets to get Santander, who could be a menace at the plate there, I mean, we saw it, we were victimized by it. Then why would we spend more than we would for just about anyone, instead of just doing that and more for Soto? So and yeah, so no, everyone's sticking with Soto, and Gregory's like nay on all those guys. Tanner Scott for closer is my first choice. Yeah,
No.
and I was going to pivot to the closers next, because we need to go hard on those relievers. Yeah, so if there's a nay on Ciarra, if there's a nay to you for Tanner Scott, what would you say to Jeff Hoffman or Carlos Estevez?
Mm, let me just say this. So Tanner Scott is a fantastic pitcher. He ended the season with a 1.75 ERA or something in that area. He's a strikeout pitcher, but he's going to cost more than what we're paying Luke Weaver, who stepped up and proved that he can be the closer. Also, anytime the Yankees acquire anybody from the Oakland A's, it bites us in the ass. So, and I know, I know that's very superstitious of me to say, but I could just see it not working out for us just because he came from Oakland. Also, there's been rumors that Tanner Scott has like elbow issues, and we, as the Yankees, we deal with enough injuries, especially to our pitchers. Like, we don't need to add to that. Um, I don't really like any of those options. They
What about
all had
Say or Williams poop saying? And FJ
so
saying Jackson Profar.
Class A was so good all season, right? The Guardians had arguably the best bullpen in baseball, but in the ALCS, they showed us that didn't mean anything. Class A pooped the bed. So
No pun intended.
the Yankees are really good at one thing, and that's taking the no-name clearance rack pitchers and turning them into superstars. I think that that's what we need to do with the bullpen again this season. Like, we don't need to go spend a ton of money on the bullpen. I think we can find good pitchers in the bargain bin, and we can turn them into Luke Weavers. Like, that's the one thing that Matt Blake is actually good at. He's not good at developing his starting pitching and fixing them when they have issues. He's good at those no-name relievers. The money needs to be spent, if not on Soto, then on the infield first, because we really need a first baseman.
Okay. But nobody's really commenting on Jackson Profar. Any comment there?
I mean, I guess, like, I sound so negative because I'm like, no, I don't want any of
No,
them.
that's okay. Yeah. Yeah, so right. So and Gregory thinks that Estevez is intriguing. I really don't have much of a background.
He has like a 4-something career ERA. Like, last season, I think it was under 2.5, but like overall career wise, it's over 4, and that makes me nervous. Like, I know not all of our bullpen is going to be under 3, but I just I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Um so yeah, poop, that's already a done deal. Kane Lee is a free agent, so
Oh, I think I was mixing up Tanner Scott with Mason Miller.
okay. What about Miller?
I 100% was. I was thinking of Miller from the
Oh,
Oakland A's. Tanner Scott is not from the. I just had a total brain fart moment. Yeah, no, Tanner Scott, I would 100% take. I totally just lied to you guys. I was thinking of Miller from the A's. He
yep.
has elbow issues, and he is from the A's, so he would give me just like PTSD every time I saw him.
Right,
So
gotcha.
yes,
Listen, it's okay to be me every now and then, Ciara. That's what I usually do. I had something different in my head and something else came out my mouth. Yeah, so I apologize. You got that from me. Thanks, but I'll take the hit for that because I do that all the time. Yeah, and Gregory, we've returned it around this year, so can Estevez. And so Lou's giving you a hard time. Oh, Lou. Um, so, oops. And yeah, we got to remember that he's good at dumpster diving. And sometimes, one man's junk is another man's treasure, and we have some proof of that. As much as we hate it, he does find a good treasure in the pile of junk every now and then. And so let me just now pivot to this. So let's talk about hellos and goodbyes. So we signed a kid named, well, he's not a kid. We signed Brandon Lee Brandt from the Reds. He signed to on a minor league contract. Why? He's 32. He's a lefty and a really low percentage of walks. And that's all the good I was able to find on him.
Because Cashman is good at the bargain bin pitchers.
Oh, okay.
That's right. Because we got him for what, a bag of chips from the vending machine. It's not like, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We just move on and get rid of him. We've seen it happen this season where we've just said, all right, well, this pitcher is not working. Goodbye. Let's bring in a Tim Hill or a Tim Meza. Who the hell are these guys? And we make it work. So I know we have holes in the bullpen, but that is probably the least of my concerns right now. And I know it's crazy to say because all season long, Yankees fans are talking about the bullpen. But we had a great bullpen going the second half of the season, postseason. The bullpen is probably the one thing that didn't worry me.
Right. Yeah, but with all these free agents leaving the bullpen, we got a lot of holes to fill. I don't know that a 32-year-old lefty whose physical history I have no idea about. I'll do more homework. And I also don't know where in the minors they put him, but we really, in terms of any money we need to spend, to me, it's all in on the pitching. And if anyone were to ask, and that's both starting and pen. And so there's so many questions there. But even at the detriment of trading Soto and opening up the wallet for other things, we were basically doing bullpen games, throughout the World Series. And yes, so were the Dodgers, but they won. We didn't. And so and a lot of those guys are not being brought back for a reason. And so we need a stronger pen. And in terms of the starting and the pen, we had Stroman in the pen and Nestor in the pen. Do either of them return to the starting rotation because we don't have people to fill the holes? So there's a whole big question mark on that. And so far, no big moves or other than the buzz that we just went through in terms of possibilities there. I mean, we do have existing, and when we get to the next segment after this, we'll talk about it. We do have guys in the system that we could think about bringing up. I know the first name Ciarra will bring up in a minute. And in terms of departures, well, we lost Rizzo. We declined Rizzo's option, and we declined Torres's qualifying offer. So so here's the question about Torres. So Ciarra, I mean, it's a non-question to you. Are the Yankees going to ultimately bring him back?
I don't know. So according to the baseball nerds of the world, his contract is worth between $7 and $8 million per year. He's making 14 right now per year. So that's a huge pay cut for him. But he has been very clear that he wants to stay in New York. But the rumor mill is that the Blue Jays are looking in on him. And if he goes to the Blue Jays, he will become a Yankee killer. We saw it with IKF on the Blue Jays. We saw it with Bader on the Mets. Like, it is what happens. Ex-Yankees, they kill us. I just don't want to see him as a Red Sox. That is the only place I would absolutely die if he went to Boston. But if he needs to go somewhere else to make money, then so be it. I'm trying to be okay with it. But I need everyone to remember that once Gleyber Torres was moved to the leadoff position in the second half of the season, he was phenomenal. And in the postseason and in the World Series, who did we count on? Gleyber Torres and Giancarlo Stanton. Because who didn't show up for us? Aaron Judge. And let's face it, after game 2, Juan Soto really didn't do much for us in the World Series either. We relied on we relied on Torres and Stanton and Anthony freaking Volpe. So I want fans to remember that next season when we don't have a Gleyber Torres hitting for us in the postseason if he's not with us, because you will miss that bat in the postseason. I can guarantee it.
Yep, so Poop and Lou are that'd be another great name. Maybe you guys should form a corporation. um, yeah, but let me remind Poop and Lou that it was really when Torres was putting the lead off, which was before the postseason, that we
Mm-hmm.
began to see the change. And that change at the plate also translated to change in the field. Yeah, there were still a couple of iffy moments from him in the postseason defensively, but so much better. I saw such an uptick in his IQ, and I think it was all about giving him his moment. And sometimes you take that risk and it really pays off, and it did. And so it's really up in the air, and everything's a domino effect that starts with where Soto falls.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, so I think that that's the unfortunate piece. And but if Glaber gets a really great offer while he's still waiting for his favorite to call, I would think that he's going to jump. So um yeah, I just think we have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best for Ciarra. And we always want the best for Ciarra. I'd feel the same way if he was my absolute. So
I mean, I would even be okay if they didn't IKF him and they brought him back as a backup. Like, you have to prove yourself at this $7 million. But would Glaber be okay with that is the question, because he's been the everyday second baseman for however long at this point. I mean, he was shortstop, but that was a very bad moment for him. Um, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. I
yeah,
even if Toronto's looking in on him, I don't see him going there just because it's even. I just don't see it happening. But
right. And the other alternative is, bring Glaber back and bring on Durbin, and they could pivot that way as well. With since Durbin's a second baseman is too, and maybe Glaber could take over some of Stanton's DHing or something. I mean, it would all be a chess game, but we're already talking about all the depth of the infield, and what to do with DJ. I mean, in my mind, let DJ sit all season and be a pinch hitter when needed or something like that. I don't even or end of inning if somebody has to be replaced on the bags in the horn, then do that. But
I say let's Phantom IL him and John Birdie for the whole season. Let's just pretend they're injured and move on.
yep, yep, 100%. And they're getting paid, and it's a shame. It's a waste, and you feel bad for guys like DJ and Birdie, who we know less deeply, and for less time. But um, it's unfortunate, but that's baseball, Susan. Um, so let's talk about prospects and the farm for a minute. And so another person that could fill the hole in terms of pitching in the pen is who, Ciarra?
I mean, me personally, I want Cody Poteet back on this team. I don't see why he ever didn't come back after the injury he had. He proved that he could step in and do it when Clark Schmidt was out, and he looked great. I don't see why he can't be in the bullpen for us. He's already in our system, right? So just bring his ass up and let him have a permanent residency to replace one of the guys that are walking out the door. Outside of that, do whatever you want with the bullpen. Hell, just give me back Cody Poteet.
Yep. I feel like we have a record with him, and he's already been up. And
Mhm.
I think that there's I think that that's an advantage in itself. So I'm not mad at the idea of Poteet. There's also a name floating out very recently, Carlos LaGrange, who's our number 20th prospect. And so last night, if anyone tuned in, it was the AFL Fall Stars All-Star game, Fall Stars game. And so LaGrange came in at the ace, and although he hit the first batter, he then, went right to strikeouts and earned the win for the American League. So so don't know much about LaGrange. Gonna look him up after, but he's someone else in the farm that there could be eyes on for seeing him, trying him out. Even taxi appearances. But other than that, I don't know who else we have in the top 20 or let alone top 10 in terms of pitching that we'll be testing.
Yeah, I don't think there really is much. I think other teams have better farm systems than us at this point, and it's going to be scary to see because I know maybe not in terms of pitching, but I know Boston has a few top prospects that they could bring up. And who knows, the AL could look different next year if the Yankees don't figure it out. I think for whatever reason, the Yankees can't figure out how to develop their minor league players and work them into our major league team. The only person we've really seen it pan out for is Volpe at this point, right? And Volpe, he was very up and down his sophomore season. He showed up for us big time in the World Series, so I'm very, very proud of him. Very happy to have him. But there was times in this season that we were like, "What is going on with this kid? Do we need to bench him? Like, why is he getting so much leash?" But outside of Volpe, we haven't seen that development. We haven't
Nope.
seen Waldo get that chance. Peraza, they've completely messed up in the head. So who knows? Because even when you watch the pitchers, like Beater and those guys, they just don't look like they're ready to be here. And then when we do give them the chance, they show it. Will Warren, perfect example. He had a horrible run every time he came up with us. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, as good as we are at developing, we're almost equally as good at messing up their heads. And you'll never know what they would have been, and that's really a very sad story. There are some free agent pitchers out there, and they got their qualifying offers, but there's been silence about them. So, and you guys already know who I'm going to say: Manea, Martinez from the Reds. We got Pivetta from the Red Sox, and we also have Sevy from the Mets, who is another case in point of did a great job with the Mets last season. But I don't think there'd be much appetite for Sevy. But
no.
You think any appetite for Manea or Martinez? I mean, Manea is a left-hander. We would be stealing from the Mets, which comes from some satisfaction. But
so let me just start by saying I was so happy to see Sevy have a bounce back season. He was one of the baby bombers, so to see him struggle the way he did in his last 2 seasons with us, that was hard to watch. So for him to come back and pitch the way that he did for the Mets, I loved every second of it. But I just don't see the Mets letting Manaya and Sevy both walk. They're gonna sign at least one of them, and I think Manaya is their top choice because he showed up big for them. And they really need him in that rotation. But I could see Cohen signing both, especially if he's not signing Soto. So, because even if let's say Soto walks and he does re-sign Alonso's not going to cost as much as Soto. He's going to be a big contract, but it's not going to be as much. I could see Manaya and Sevy going back to Queens.
Yeah, and I would definitely not want Sevy back. I think if you folks in the chat are agreeing with that, the memory is too fresh. And there's a reason why he's thriving there, and it's not the drinking water in Flushing. I think that it's just that it's a better environment for him, and probably a better something about the whole culture and management of the team. But I think he's the one that got away, that that we won't forget, and we always wonder if. But and so let's see. Then we've already talked about Fried. We're running out of other free agents that are even worth the discussion.
So when it comes to Nick Pivetta, I don't hate the idea, but I think the Cardinals are interested in him. And the Cardinals are in an interesting situation right now because they are talking about shopping Nolan Arenado, who has a no trade clause. So he would have to agree to be traded. And they're also shopping Sonny Gray, who also has a no trade clause. And he's made it very clear that he does not want to leave. And he's still owed $50 million for the next 2 years. And Arenado is also owed $74 million for the next 5 years. He has a few years left, and it's 74, but the Rockies owe him 10, so the Rockies are on the hook for 10. So they're in an interesting situation because they want to move on from these two players, but they both have a no trade clause, so they have to agree to be traded. And Sonny Gray is saying, absolutely not. I'm not going anywhere. So we'll see if they can fill those holes. And then Corbin Burns, I know we talked about him a little bit, but him walking from the Orioles is huge because that's the Orioles are hurting right now in the rotation, but he's looking for a lot of money. And I don't think there's a team out there willing to give him $200 million because we've seen the Apple epidemic and how it's affected pitching over the past few years. The pitchers at this point in the game are all way too injury prone, and I don't know if any of them are worth paying them that type of money.
You think Baltimore will come up with the money to hold on to him?
I think if they don't come up with a viable replacement, they have no choice.
Right. And
because
then that's going to be it for them.
Yeah, because if Sonny Gray's off the market, they have to find someone.
Isn't Lance Lynn on the market?
I think so, but I really couldn't find any news or rumors around him at this point. He's pushing 40 at this point, isn't he?
Oh, really? Okay. I knew he was up there, but I mean, if we're signing 32-year-old minor leaguers, I just thought I would. I know I've heard him mentioned, but couldn't find anything recent, like this week recent. So
yeah,
was just wondering. And hey, Li, good to see you.
Li, we're not talking about just the Yankees. We're talking about just baseball in general and where some of these guys will fall. And I think Lance Lynn, he's not. If he does go on the move, whoever signs him, it won't be for a lot because I want to say he's like 38 years old, and that's just kind of old in baseball at this point.
Most definitely. And for the Yankees, it's time to spend the money on development and bringing up the younger guys because face it, Cole is no spring chicken, and so we gotta really figure stuff out with Cortez and Stroman, for example. And Rodon will always need to figure out, but we're an aging team when it comes to the rotation.
Except for Luis Gil, who was actually American League Rookie of the Year. So
that's exactly right. And that was going to be my next mention for our newest Hot Stove segment in other news. Yeah, so take it away. That's exactly who's on there.
Listen, I'm super happy for Luis Gil, but I won't lie to you guys. I was shocked that he won American League Rookie of the Year because first half, fantastic. Second half, he had control issues, and his injury seemed to come back and like taunt him a little bit. So I was shocked. But Gil and Schmidt are still on the younger side, and those two, they're a good combo. But to your point, Lynn, Rodon, he's a head case. Cole, I don't know what the hell happened to him in the postseason, but he was not the Garrett Cole that we've known in the past. Stroman has a lot to prove. We didn't even see him in the postseason. He was on the roster. He was basically, this is the group project. You're getting credit for it, but you're not doing any work.
I'll never understand it.
Yeah. And then Nestor Cortez, he was out for, I don't know, 50, 11 days, came back, was put in the worst situation possible. Like, that rotation needs some work. I think the only person I'm not worried about is Clark Schmidt. He just has to figure out that third time through the order, and he's going to be fine. But Luis Gil, shout out to him for winning AL Rookie of the Year. Just please, pretty please work on your location because I can't go through next season worrying about if he's going to hit somebody in the head or if there's going to be 75 balls in the dirt and people are going to be scoring. It's just too stressful.
And we have enough stress in our lives. This is supposed to be a hobby, and we treat it like it's our jobs. And so they really have so much to figure out. And even just going through all of this today, it feels like It's giving me as much anxiety as the postseason did, because there's no absolutes. There's no, and this is the thing about the hot stove season. It's dark and it's cold because the news is going to drip, 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 drip in. And especially with this team, let me remind everybody, this is the team of 11:59 and 59 seconds making the move that we've been waiting for. So it's going to be, particularly torturous for us. Um, and yeah, so shout out to Louise Heel. And let's just keep that homegrown thing going with him. And looking at his numbers for the season, and he posted 3.5 ERA. You know what? I'm not mad at that whatsoever. And he's just still starting and figuring stuff out, because there was a good point in the chat about really just needing to, here it is. And Eli, I think that's a valid point. He has to figure out his zone and his command. But yeah, this kid is going to rise through the rotation. So yeah, there are future Schmidt and Heel. And here's what FJ is weighing in on. So let's see. They're the fourth and fifth starters for now. Nestor cannot be the third starter. Stroman breaks down in the second half. The Yankees have to sign. Yeah, I mean, case closed. At least one, or bring up Poteet and let him stay. Or something we already have. But this rotation isn't it. I think the question about does Nestor even be a starter remains, and will come up again and again and again. I think that's going to fall on where we land with any of the acquisitions, and we're only just starting this conversation. So yeah, I think that about wraps up. I mean, this was a pretty heavy first time talking about what's next, what's going on, what are the options. Any final thoughts on your end, Ciarra?
I'm just ready for an interesting off season. We talked a lot about Sasaki when we first opened up. We've talked a lot of big names. There's a lot of big names on the market right now. So I just hope Scott Boras doesn't ruin the off season. He's connected to too many people at this point, and he drives me crazy. If the Yankees are listening, I don't want Pete Alonso. I just don't like the guy. Please, please, please do not put him in the Bronx. I will cry. That's my final thoughts.
Yeah, and I know we've said this about other players that have proved us wrong. He won't fit in here. And I don't think he would do well with the clubhouse. And hey, LA Yankee King, watch the top of the show. It was the very first topic we hit, and Ciara and I are also sick with coughs. So I hope you get better. If that cough, because I'm sure that cough wasn't sarcastic. And let me just put Mike up for a second. Yeah, so if we don't get essentially if we don't we're sunk if we don't get Soto.
The Yankees beat themselves. I'll leave it at that. The Yankees were not outmatched by the Dodgers. Dodgers fans can keep telling themselves that they were, but if you go back and watch Game 5 and even Game 1, the Yankees beat them freaking selves. Like they beat themselves with fundamental baseball. They forgot how to field the ball. They forgot how to run the bases. And Aaron Boone put Nestor Cortez in Game 1 in the worst possible situation. So we beat ourselves, hands down. I don't care what anyone else says. It is what it is. We have to move on and fill the holes and be ready for next season.
And there you have it, everybody. I really want to say thank you to everyone in the chat. Ciara and I just love hanging out with you every week, and there are some names we haven't seen very often, if at all. Hope you come back. And co-host with us next time, and we'll be back next week for another The Upper Deck. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and look into becoming a member. It's an easy thing to do. Just go to our channel, hit community, and then hit the join button, and you'll get all the information you need to have access to premium content from us and from the Pinstripe Chronicle guys. So as always, you have a reserved seat with Ciara and me right here on the upper deck. Go Yankees as always. Have a good day.